Sunday night, June. See, I had the episode number down exactly, and I forgot the date.
Is it
June
13th?
8th.
Eight,
No, it's
yeah.
that June 8th, episode 13, though. All
Yeah,
right,
that's
so I
what I
did
meant.
have that.
Episode 13.
June 8th, episode 13, Sunday night. We're live on YouTube on the Jackson Post YouTube channel. And if you're not joining us live, that's fine. It will be posted in its edited version, which I don't know if you noticed this. I edited out all of our ums and uhs and all of those things. And
I
it
don't do that.
you don't do any of the uhs and
I
ums.
don't. Yeah, it's all you.
It's just me then. I say a lot too. Anyway, all of that gets edited out, and sometimes it can be like an hour and 10 minutes, and by the time I do the edits, it's like 58. It's amazing, like how much we waste by just umming and it.
The week that I had, see, there you go. The week that I had pollen trouble, like week 3 or whatever. How much did you edit out? Like, do you remember how much that cut off of that one?
I'll be honest, the program I use, how many minutes? I think it did like 10, like literally 10 minutes was cut. Because I just say remove all unnecessary pauses, and it does it itself. And then it recommends like parts of it that are fluff, and they're like, do you want to take this fluff out? We haven't had a lot of fluff the last 2 times, but there was one time where I was just stumbling over my thought. It was just this word salad. It was just spilling out, and I couldn't grab it. And so that's fluff, apparently, to AI.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
That is... All right, so this is the only content related to the Jackson Post that is AI that I'm involved in producing. Everything else with my name on it is actually coming out of my brain through my shoulders and elbow onto the keyboard.
Now there are some opinion columns that have been questionable though. Not yours.
Well, I have had a couple of people ask me in recent, and I had somebody ask me if I took a press release and put my name on it. I know that's usually staff reports or
staff.
I put the writer's name on it. So
I love that staff reports. I like it. It's like the mystery man. It's the Black Scorpion of the Jackson Post.
Or the
anonymous.
Speaking
of the Black, did you watch the Money in the Bank last night? Have you seen the highlights? Okay, I won't spoil anything, but
I've seen the highlights. I know who won, and I saw who returned.
There you go. And he was dressed like the Black Scorpion.
He was.
The hoodie and the mask and everything. Yeah. All right. Let's get to more. It's not sports entertainment. We'll call it political entertainment. As we review what was on the front page of last week's edition of the Jackson Post, and we're going to lead off with the headline, City Council passes budget without raising taxes, because the last time you and I were on here talking, the majority of the conversation was about the proposed tax increases. I'm sorry. Tax adjustments from Mayor Conger when he sort of announced that on Facebook on Sunday morning, and it was a whole thing.
Yeah.
And then we talked about the work session that we both attended, and finally it leads up to the city council, the actual meeting, and boy, was it a 3-ring circus on Tuesday. You were there, Brandon. You were live tweeting. What are some takeaways from it?
So I had one person who had never, there were a lot of nonprofit directors who were there that day who don't usually go to these meetings. And one who I don't think had ever been to one asked me, they said, is this what they're usually like? And I said, no, this one's on one extreme of the spectrum. Which end of that spectrum, I'll let those who keep up with this decide. But I will say there wasn't anything that I didn't expect. Like, it wasn't within the realm of, okay, yeah, I did not expect this to happen, except for those 10 minutes or so where literally the 10 people who were officially a part of this meeting, Mayor Conger and all 9 council members who were there, for about 10 minutes, they literally had no idea what was going on because of the corners that they were painting themselves into and the webs that they were weaving, whatever metaphors you want to use for what they were doing. We literally had a motion, an amendment to a motion, an amendment to the amendment to the motion, and that amendment to the motion being amended. Like, we had 4 levels of amendments on a motion, but also on that motion, the official motion came from Conger, which was his proposal that he put out the Friday before, which was the day after we recorded the last one, which is essentially any capital outlay that's proposed that is not already funded by grants that the city has already secured, we're taking them out. And that, it didn't take care of the entire deficit, but it cut it down to, I think, to like 400,000 or something like that. So something more manageable if you're just going to use fund balance to do it. But he was taking out like bulletproof vests for JPD. not like everybody, but the new ones that they were going to buy, new bulletproof vests for the canine officers, new protective equipment for firefighters for them to wear as they're running into the buildings and pulling people out. That apparently Fire Chief Friddle totally missed this proposal until he got to the meeting Monday morning and they started discussing it. That's according to what he said when he and Police Chief Tom Corley appeared before the council. He said, I'll be honest with y'all, I didn't know about about this stuff getting taken out until this morning. And go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, clearly they did not read the letter to the editor of WBBJ by a Councilwoman Busby, because she did mention that. And I'm halfway being facetious, but I'm halfway being serious too, because that caught my eye. I was like, whoa, wait a second, because that is what she seemed to like focus on, and that was that protective, taking away from fire and police. And if you're ever going to get the community up in arms, and rightfully so, you start talking about pulling money from the people who protect us.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let me ask you this. Was this a response to, you and I were both at the workshop.
Yeah.
The city council talked in circles about, like, here's the issue, but they never could figure out how to solve this issue, which was a $3.5 million deficit. Conger had his proposal. They didn't like it, but then they couldn't come up with anything to solve it. So he's like, okay, you don't like an increase in taxes. Well, I'm just going to strip all. Was this a way to just force them to do something? And I'm just playing that. Like, I'm just thinking I don't think, based on the decisions he's made in his first term as mayor and then so far in this one, this just doesn't seem like something he would like want to do just on his own.
Right.
I felt like this was a move to force them to do something.
Well, what I'm about to say is not my own personal thoughts. I try not to have personal thoughts about motivations and stuff as I'm watching stuff like this play out. So I'm just relaying some stuff that was said to me.
Okay.
But you mentioned Councilmember Busby's column that she sent to WBBJ, and then she later sent it to myself and our good buddy Chuckles. And after BBJ had already posted it twice and totally botched the presentation of it. But
they can do that.
Well, I've done it before myself, so I'm not throwing stones. But one of the other 8 called me a couple hours after Conger sent the email out to the council people and included the media on it. And the person said, are you, or maybe they called me Saturday, either way, they said, are you aware of what his removals were taken out? And I said, no, I didn't really have a lot of time yesterday to look at it. And they said, essentially the stuff that I mentioned earlier, all the protective equipment for the first responders. And it was kind of taken as Conger forcing their hand and trying to put it off on them when he's the one who made the proposal. And let's just say this council member, and I'm assuming that this council member had spoken with other council members and they were not happy about the mayor putting them in this position. So they had 4 days after that to get their statements and their filibusters and their grandstands ready about how they support police and how they support fire and first responders, and they want the people of this city kept safe, and they want the people of this city to know that if they're in trouble and they're having a really bad day that needs a fire or policeman, they're going to be there, and those people are going to be protected while they're doing their job. And once they got through all that, once everybody decided, okay, we're not taking that stuff away from them, but we do need to know how much it costs. Like, is there any way we can get around cutting this? And it took them about an hour to figure out, we just need to go back to the original plan. If we're going to have a $3.76 million deficit, and we're just going to take it out of fund balance that 12 days earlier, they were told was at $21 million. But then once City Recorder Nathan Reed had a minute to go back in his office and actually check the fund balance, it's actually closer to $18 million. Because some stuff had been taken out to pay for stuff. Now, a lot of that stuff is going to be reimbursed. As of right now, it's still getting them dangerously close to that 15% mark. That would get your good buddy Jason Mumpower in the state comptroller's office involved.
That's my good buddy. I know who that man is. So here, let's work our way backwards, because you just, you said essentially what ended up happening at the city council after the 10 amendments and, all the elephants walked around and, the music played and we had the trapeze swinger came through. We had it all. And they finally decided, okay, we're not going to raise taxes. We're not going to take away any needs from our first responders. We're going to dip into the fund balance. We're going to pull this 3 point, whatever it is from there. We're going to get as close as we can to this 15% and just, thoughts and prayers that and not really thoughts and prayers, but they said, we're going to start meeting long term. And this is where I want to get into this conversation, because regardless of of whatever Mayor Conger's intent was whenever he gave his second proposal
Right.
for the budget, at some point, shouldn't the city council be monitoring this budget throughout the year so that it's not all of a last minute kind of deal? Shouldn't that be happening? And I think as a citizen, I was just under the impression that it was happening. Kind of find out it wasn't at all.
Yeah, and particularly after how they were in this situation last year. And then we had all the drama at the end of November, going into December, and then finally resolving itself of sorts in January that amounted to the $26 million bond issue being requested. You would think, and I mean, if y'all want to frame this as a criticism, I mean, I don't mean it maliciously if it is, but I guess maybe it is on some level. You would have thought that the budget committee would have been taking a harder look at that. And Frank McMean is the chair. Sorry, I got mosquitoes out here. Frank McMean is the chair. Julie Holt and Johnny Dodd serve on that committee. I think they're the only 3 council members who are on there. And then, is there a 4th council member on there? There's 7 members. I'm trying to remember if it's 3 council and 4 civilians or vice versa. It's been a while since they had all 7 members there. But Holt, Dodd, and McMean are the 3 from the council that are always there. So I would expect, and I did a timeline going back to March 27th at a budget committee meeting where Mayor Conger and Nathan Reed kind of said, hey, this is the plan for the budget. We'll involve y'all directly into the conversation in about a month and a half. I would have thought after last year and the bond issue drama that they would not have needed more informing or as much informing as what they were asking for and were getting in March and April, but they did. But I think that this proposal that you were there for when Larry Lowrance, I guess, officially / unofficially made this proposal, and it's kind of piggybacking off of something that Marta Wallace had said a week before, where it's like, okay, let's don't do a tax increase. Let's see if we can do it. Let's see if we can go another year and kind of take a closer look at it the whole time. And let's see if we can see, maybe there's something in October we could cut, that there's some money being spent that doesn't need to, or something in December or anything like that, that for whatever reason isn't as visible in April or May or June. They said they were going to do it last year. They didn't, but it sounded like by the end of the meeting that the majority of the 9 council members were on board with, yeah, let's go ahead and get this started sometime soon after July 1st.
Now, I know the county commission and city council, 2 different things, 2 different governing bodies. How often does the budget committee and the county commission meet and sort of review their budgets? Is it kind of the same as city council, or are they more consistent?
They're more consistent in, one, they always meet at about the same time. It's always the same Tuesday as city council. In fact, I missed this month's budget committee meeting because of how long city council went. And I've done a little bit of whining to the county commission people in charge of that. And they're like, we will take your concerns and not care. So, but they were like, well, if you miss it, you can go back and listen to the recording. So I will say Chairman Carl Alexander has been good about doing interviews and filling me in after the meetings. But anyways, they're meeting monthly. They have 5 commissioners and 2 civilians who are on that one. But then in April, when they start having budget hearings and they're listening to the department heads in April. And I mean, they're meeting since April 1st until June 8th. If it hadn't been 10 meetings, it's been close that they met in the last 2 months.
They're meeting once a week, pretty much, from April until budget time. That's what
on
it sounds
average.
Like
if they skip a week or 2, there has been they have 3 days of budget hearings in 1 week. So that's 3 of the 10. And then there have been at least 1, maybe 2 more weeks where they have met twice. With the AJ Massey trying to get more money for the HR director / deputy mayor, that was addressed on Monday and resolved on Friday in 2 different meetings. And neither of them were the regular monthly meeting.
Would it be a stretch to say that the county commission budget committee met as much within the span of 2 months as the city council budget committee met in the entire year?
Yeah, if not more. If it's not the same amount, it was close, because the budget committee, city budget committee, I don't think has met every month. Now, there have been plenty of months where I haven't been there, but there have been a few months that they met and I wasn't there either. I had something else going on that I couldn't be there, or just forgot to put it on my calendar. But yeah, I mean, if we're assuming that the city met 10 times in the last year, then, and now that's not counting 2 budget workshops that the council has had and 2 days of budget hearings with the department heads that they've had. But that's
Okay.
the whole council. That's not the committee. So,
Right. And a lot of these things sort of get fleshed out in these committee meetings, I would assume, or there's at least a closer eye on each department.
mm,
There's a lot of talk about transparency in the workshop that we were both at,
mhm.
especially like almost like a line by line analysis. Is that something that they're planning to do over the next year as part of meeting more regularly, where they're really going to open that budget up and see exactly what money is going to what line item?
I think that's where it's going to go. I think they're hoping they don't do that. And when I say they, I'm thinking everybody that's going to be on. I don't know if it's going to be the whole council or if they're just going to select a committee and just say, hey, anybody that wants to be on the committee, raise your hands and you'll be on the committee. Because, I mean, there are a lot of lines in this budget. And I know that they're going to talk to different department heads at each meeting. It's not like they're going to call everyone in for every meeting. So, they may call Chief Corley in 1 month and uh, the pet place, Whitney Owen.
Whitney Owen. Mhm.
Yeah, and I couldn't name the animal care center, and another smaller department in 1 month, and then the next month they might call in Austin Clark, who's over public works, and maybe Stan Pilot, who's over planning. I don't know, some other small department, and kind of go through each of those line by line. Which even with the smaller departments, that's going to be a lot of heavy lifting for each of those meetings. So it's going to be a lot of, I would expect, long meetings, a lot of meetings that I legitimately fall asleep during if I'm there for them.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, once you start getting into the weeds, those weeds can get thick and those weeds can get tall. And you are looking for not a golf ball, but a marble
Mhm.
sometimes. And I really think that they are looking for marbles that they hope are going to be valuable and reduce the deficit on this thing. And they're also hoping that they can just kind of wait this out for a couple of years so that when all these apartments that are getting built throughout the city, when they come online and they got people and they're paying rent, and Great Wolf Lodge is being projected to bring in over $1 million of tax revenue a year. So they're hoping that all this stuff is going to bring in more money without them having to expend a lot of extra money to take care of all that.
Have they looked at other communities in Tennessee that are close to our size, and you may not know this, and have those communities raised taxes in the last 20 years? I know that whenever, I forgot what it was, maybe it was at the county, maybe it was another city issue a couple years ago. They were like, well, let's look at these towns over here. This is what their budget is. This is what
Mm.
they're doing. This is a town that's similar to Jackson. I mean, if you had raised taxes in 20 years, I feel like at some point with inflation and everything else, it's just inevitable that taxes are going.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's a pretty easy assumption. The first work session, the one that they had a week before, the one that you went to, when tax increases were first brought up, Mayor Conger anticipated that discussion. So he went ahead and had Nathan Reed, and who's the city recorder, and Ron Schultes, the chief of staff, kind of start looking around and pulling up some numbers and getting some figures together and stuff. And one of the things that Schultes shared was, I don't know, maybe about 10 cities, and just kind of what their property tax rates were and stuff. And they weren't all the size of Jackson. I mean, there's not a lot of cities in Tennessee that are the size of Jackson. There are definitely 4 or 5 that are way bigger, and then there's a bunch that are way smaller. And the one that was lowest, and of course, Jackson is at 161.14. The lowest one was at 129, I think, or 139. It was like a good chunk lower, and it's Clarksville. And it's like, how could how could Clarksville's be so much lower? And Conger mentioned, he's like, well, when you got that big fort there,
Fort Campbell, that's what I was going to say. I mean, of
yeah,
course.
that's a ton of people there. That, I mean, you've already got Austin P State University, which has a good chunk of people coming in from August through May. But you got a whole fort that is its own pretty big town, and I think that most of that across the state line in Kentucky.
Yeah, a lot of it is, but the sales tax is going to be through the roof, though, right? Comparatively. And I think that's where
Exactly.
they make that up. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you've got that going on, Clarksville is able to keep their taxes, and I assume Montgomery County is even able to keep their taxes even lower than Madison County. And this statement is going to sound like I'm advocating for a tax increase, and I'm sorry, a tax adjustment. And I promise y'all I'm not, because I don't care. But when you look at the surrounding counties and you look at, for instance, your people in Jackson Madison County schools and the work that y'all are doing to kind of turn that whole ship around, and you look at some of the school districts around Madison County and just kind of where they're at, which, money doesn't automatically translate to higher test scores or better grades or, better scholarships or more higher level schools or whatever. But, if Madison Countyans are unhappy with the services that they're being provided and they feel like they should be provided more than what they're getting, maybe it's a case of you're getting what you're paying for. And I mean, I can complain all day long about the quality of Mexican food I get at Taco Bell, but until I'm willing to, put out a little bit more money per burrito at Tulum, I'm just going to have to deal with what I get in that bean burrito with extra sour cream.
That grade D meat.
Let's not get into that.
Okay, that was an urban legend when I was growing up. That it was dog food. Hey, what's the tax rate in Medina where you live? Do you know off the top of your head?
Off the top of my head, I do not know.
Okay,
I mean, it's.
I would imagine it's higher.
Yeah. It's definitely higher.
For sure.
I just can't remember what it is because it's still part of the escrow payments that are part of the mortgage payment. So I've never just really looked at that.
I think for people, and these two examples I'm going to give before we move on to the Q&A part of this, they're extreme examples. And since 2012, essentially, I've spent every other weekend in a different town. One was McKinney, Texas, 30 miles north of Dallas. The tax rates are exorbitant. Of course, it's one of the wealthiest areas, like metropolitan areas in the country. So
it's like the Franklin of Dallas.
It's the Franklin of Dallas, essentially. Of course, there are like 10 Franklins of Dallas in that area because it's so big like that. And then the last 4 years, I've spent a lot of weekends in the suburb of Philadelphia, Media, Pennsylvania, and the tax rates are exorbitant there as well. And those are two on the high end of the spectrum. Of course, the quality of life stuff that those places have there's no comparison. Mm-hmm. But here's where I come back. I think people in Jackson, I've lived for my life. I don't think we realize how affordable it is. Mm-hmm. And it has been forever to live here. This is just a very cheap place to live. I know cheap has a connotation, but like you said, at some point, and again, I think I said this last week, this is a conversation. This kind of boils down to, what do you want Jackson to be? If you're somebody that just wants Jackson to stay status quo and, let's just keep everything like it is, don't increase my taxes, I just want to, afford to live here and that's it, then you don't want anything. You don't want taxes at all. But if you're somebody who says, hey, maybe we can grow and offer some amenities to our community, maybe help out people who really aren't in a position to help themselves, then okay, I can swallow this, whatever this increase is. And my life was not going to be that different. Now, and I get it. I understand both sides of it. But one thing you put in the paper I thought that was really good, and we're going to jump to this part, was a Q&A, or the frequently asked questions. Okay, so we're going to play a little game. I'm going to ask you one of these frequently asked questions, and I've got your answer pulled up. I want to see how close you can get to your original answer. All right, are you ready?
No, I'm not, but go ahead.
Okay, we've already gone through the proposal. And by the way, the way this was all solved was, as we said earlier, they just dipped into the fund balance to cover this deficit, right? Yep. So that's how this ended. Okay, so a lot of people were saying on social media, well, why don't we just try to get revenue from other places and blah blah blah. Okay, so here is a question for you. Okay, where did I find it? Weren't property taxes refigured a couple of years ago? Because I saw that online a lot. We just had a tax increase. Okay, so what's the story on that?
All right, so the state, essentially, I was afraid you were going to ask this because this is the one that is somewhat confusing. So I'm going to try to give you the most simplest, oversimplified, dumbed down answers possible, and it's not for anybody besides me. Okay. But essentially, the state redid how tax appraisals are reconfigured, and it's on Francis Hunley, who is the property assessor in Madison County, to determine how much the house that you are paying mortgage payments on how much that's worth. But the state reconfigured whatever her office says your house is worth. They reconfigured how that tax is figured up. And when they did that, a lot of people's tax rates got increased. And according to some of the comments on Facebook, which I'm sure every single one of those were totally 100% reliable, it was some massive percentage-wise increases. And for anybody who may have put that in a comment thread that I might have seen, I didn't say you're a liar. I just said I'm not sure that I trust every single one of them. So I didn't call you a liar. So stop. And there's also an expectation when that happens, because they did this in Medina, actually. The way that was done, there's an expectation that when the value of the rate goes up, that the city is just going to take that. But the state always says, hey, we've redone this and you can take this money if you want to, but we're also giving you the freedom to decrease your tax rate. So to the point where you're essentially taking in about the same you took in last year. So if you want to go ahead and take in that higher amount, you can, or you can take it easy on your citizens, maybe do yourself a favor when it comes re-election time and decrease those rates. And there was a discussion. And this was not the current. It was the previous council when all this happened. I think it was 21 when this happened, maybe 22 before the election. Yeah, because the elections were in 23, where that was discussed. But they ultimately decided, no, let's go ahead and knock it back down. But I think Congress said that if the rates were what they were 5 years ago, if they were able to apply the numbers, the formula for 5 years ago, if they were applied to today, the city would have had $400,000 more of revenue than what they have. And that's not counting how much more they would have had they not readjusted. Because I think if anybody is watching this or is going to watch this and I get this wrong, text me and I'll clarify. Because one clarification I need to say after this discussion's over, please remind me. We'll use a clarification. We'll just say clarify something from last week. But I want to say that the property tax rate was at like 195 or 196, and that's when it dropped down to 161, the current rate. So, and that was they did that so that you would not have to pay a noticeably higher property tax rate or lump sum of a property tax compared to the year before because of what the state did in Nashville with their formula or whatever.
Didn't the county do the same thing too, as well? Yeah, that's what I thought so. Okay, last question for this Q&A part, because
I don't
this
think
is
their
where
decrease. I don't think their rate of dropping was as much as the cities. I could be wrong about that.
but they both dropped it to where it would, like, homeowners or property owners wouldn't see a jump in
As much.
whatever they were paying.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. All right. So here's the last question. Is there nowhere else in the budget that can be cut? Because it seemed to be like specifically 3 council members, maybe 4, were really harping on this. If I can remember, like I think Councilman McMean said it a couple times in the workshop, Councilperson Wallace, Busby. I'm not sure if Lowrance chimed in or not on this, but like, where can we cut? And you referenced this a few minutes earlier where, if you comb through the tall weeds of this and you find a few marbles, and that's kind of what they're hoping to do.
Mm.
But we were in there when Councilman Donnell flat out asked the department heads in that workshop, what can you cut? And they were all like, we can't cut anything. It's like we're bare bones. So is there anywhere that can be cut from what you've heard? Or is this just like we are at the baseline of what we need to, other than the mayor's office? Because I think that's another sticking point for certain council people.
I mean, to hear everyone tell it, to hear the mayor and the department heads tell it, no, there is nowhere to cut. And the way that McMean phrased it, he looks around the table and he's like, y'all, we're talking about different ways we can add to it, but what about cuts? Does anybody see anywhere we can cut? And I think that was what sparked the conversation that led to all the nonprofit directors being at the meeting on Tuesday, because Candace Busby mentioned, hey, we're giving $1 million a year to nonprofits. How about, and the way she said it, it was cut it. And I don't think she meant it permanently. I think she kind of meant it in a way like, my household, my wife and I, we give some money on a monthly basis she's got 2 or 3 friends that are doing mission work in different countries around the world, and we support those. There's a Christian music station that doesn't do advertising. They rely on crowdfunding and K-Love. And I know at one time we were giving to them. I think we still are. But if, God forbid, times got hard for us, well, those missionaries are going to have to go without for a little while. Hopefully, God will supply something to supplement what we're not given. And if K-Love gets shut down because we're not given, well, we still got a Christian station in Milan I like to listen to. So, and I think that's kind of what she was talking about for the city. Like, if we need to get through this rough patch here so that we can figure all this out, then maybe we don't need to give the money that we're given to RISA and Area Relief Ministries and the Jackson Symphony and Ballet Arts and all these nonprofits around here.
And to be fair, like she did directly say, like, cut all of them. She did say that. Now, for the amount of time, nobody specified that. I did hear some echoes, maybe not like as clear and concise as she said it, but even ironically, Councilman McMean said sort of the same thing. Literally, his job is managing nonprofits, or at least watching that money. I don't, personally, I think that would be a bad idea, but it was part of the discussion. So this is where we are, and at least I'm sure, I would assume on the second reading it's going to pass. Like everybody seems to be on the same page with this at this point, because I don't know what else you can.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, usually when they do the first reading, the second reading is a pretty short meeting, which they have called that meeting to be 2 weeks from tomorrow, which would be the 23rd. So we've got county commission next Monday, and then the week after that, another city council meeting. And I don't expect it to be a long meeting. Hopefully, in and out of there in 15 minutes. But if I don't know, if a certain council member pulls the briefcase out of his chair that he's sitting on and sees a figure on a spreadsheet on one of his papers that he hasn't looked at yet, or doesn't act like he's looked at yet in the meetings, that might spark a whole new conversation, and they've got to go back and do another first reading and another second reading and back the approval process up past the June 30th deadline.
Let's hope not. Let's hope not. Now, I do think that might happen. A council person will look at something for the very first time in that meeting and then ask 10 questions about it. Mm-hmm. All right, there was a group of people who came out to protest this tax increase. Like anybody wants a tax increase, honestly. But they decided that they wanted to come out and say, hey, make sure we know that no one wants a tax increase. Was it like a specific group? I know Trey Cleek works for AFP and he sort of organized it, but was this just some citizens that wanted to come out there and say, I mean, their signs are all uniform. They had them printed up, like they were organized and in sync. Is this a specific group or just some citizens who wanted to come out and
this wasn't an official like We the People or the Madison County Republicans doing this. This was part of what Trey does for his day job. And in fact, he's doing a similar one in Weakley County here in the next week or two, because Weakley County Commission is talking about raising their tax rates there. Excuse me. I think I inhaled a mosquito. But, part of what he does, I mean, the mission of AFP is to essentially hold governments at all levels accountable for how they spend public money. And so Trey was kind enough to talk to him. He and I talked for a little while after the agenda review meeting that I think you left early for. He and I stood around talking for a little while, and we talked a couple of times since then about just kind of his own personal beliefs as a citizen of Jackson, but also just kind of what, just kind of his essentially towing the company line in this instance for AFP. And he's like, look, as a citizen of Jackson, I question whether or not everyone has really done a thorough job of looking at the budget. I mean, surely out of a budget of $102 million, y'all can find somewhere to cut $3 million. And so AFP in Nashville will sometimes call for the people to gather together in a public place to have their voices be heard by your buddy Chris Todd and his colleagues in the state legislature. And so Trey is doing the same thing here in rural West Tennessee in a couple of instances.
Did he or any of his group, did he say, hey, here's what I would do to make up this $3 million? Or here's some things that we would like to see happen? Other than just the general idea of like, hey, let's cut $3 million. Like, were there any specific plans that they said, hey, if we do this, this, and this might?
If they did, I didn't hear it.
Okay. So let's put the city council thing to bed and just brace for a positive second reading and get this budget passed, and then hope that, and I will agree with Trey on this. Like, I do think the budget should be monitored closer throughout the entire year so that we're not up against a wall like this, yes, absolutely. And comb through and everything like that. Everyone who I think pays taxes at least wants to know how their money is being spent. Now we might disagree over whether it's being spent the right way or not, but at least we should all know where it's going. Like, here's how this money is being spent.
Right.
All right. Let's have some positive news. And this is going to be a learning.
Pass the budget. What's negative about that? Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. 8 games. By the way, and the pictures of Massey and Conger holding that torch. I saw there were like different angles. Those things, they were something. I feel like there are going to be some memes made at some point. If I can make memes, I would make them myself. I can't make them. All right. So what are the state games? Mm-hmm. It's a great opportunity for Madison County to show off, but what are they? I haven't heard of them until like a week and a half ago.
Okay, you should read the Jackson Post then on a more regular basis, Gabe.
2 weeks ago.
Because, okay, there have been a handful. I mean, not like every week or even every month, but there have been a handful of articles over the last 10 or 11 months since it was first announced they were coming, talking about it. But anyways, state games. The state games first started in New York about 30 years ago, I think, maybe 40, at some point in the 20th century, before the turn of the century, for all the young folks out there who didn't realize that there was a time before the year 2000. And so it was essentially just kind of the state of New York said, hey, we've got all these people in this one city, and we've also got a lot of other people living upstate, and there's a lot of athletes around here, and there's a lot of people proud of what they can do athletically. Let's have some games where we see who the best athletes in the state are. And they call them the state games, and it's almost like the Olympics for the state of New York. And when the surrounding states saw New York doing it, then they started doing it, and it just kind of spread over the next few years there, to the point that I don't think it's quite 40, but it's somewhere in the 30s. That 30-something states are doing this. Tennessee had never been one of those 30-something, and so Lindsay Dawkins, now Lindsay Dawkins Moon, she was married a couple weeks ago. Congratulations, Lindsay, if you're watching. She is from Meridian, Mississippi, and she actually competed in Mississippi state games when she was, I assume, in high school, maybe college or later, before she moved up here. I think she said she even won. She played softball, and they were held in her hometown of Meridian, Mississippi. And Meridian, I don't know how big Meridian is. I've not spent a lot of time in the state of Mississippi. Ironically, seeing as how I grew up like 20 miles from Mississippi, I hadn't spent a lot of time there.
I don't blame you. I wouldn't. Yeah. I wouldn't either.
But it's I get the perception it's probably on the level of Jackson, Tennessee. I don't think it's the level of the capital city, Jackson, Mississippi, or Oxford, or Hattiesburg, or Biloxi.
Shout out Brett Favre, Hattiesburg.
Yep. But it's big enough that I've heard of it, and apparently they were bringing in, by year 15 that they were holding, they were bringing in 4,000 or 5,000 athletes a year. So 4,000 or 5,000 athletes, you're probably averaging 10,000, 15,000 people over the course of a couple of weekends. That's going to be a nice little local economic boost there for you. And so she made the pitch to Kyle Spurgeon to say, hey, can I put this together and make a pitch to the National State Game or the National Games organization that maybe Jackson and Madison County host the Tennessee State Games. And she and Ryan Blake with the West Tennessee Healthcare Sportsplex, he's essentially the number 2 guy under Jason Compton there. They kind of organized everything, and Lindsay went and made a presentation, and we were approved to host it. And so this past weekend is the first weekend of that. Most of the sports that are being hosted are happening this weekend, and then I think there's going to be 5 or 6 others next weekend, mostly like a couple of 5K races, wedge, if you've heard of that sport. That's a modified version of golf that was actually invented by a couple of people in Madison County. Horseshoes. I'm legitimately thinking about signing up and competing in horseshoes.
They have cornhole? That's basically...
They have cornhole. They have cornhole too.
Cornholes. That's a whole different... Okay.
In fact, cornhole is the only sport in the entire state games. I can't even believe I'm saying this as if I care, but cornhole is the only sport in the entire state games that they are allowing alcoholic beverages at.
Well, of course, duh, you have to. If you're playing cornhole, you have to have an alcoholic beverage in your hand.
I've been in some events where there are some drunk horseshoe throwers too.
Well, but that's dangerous. Like, you can kill somebody there. Like, cornhole is just beanbags. I played cornhole like 2010. I was cornhole before cornhole was cool. And I told my eighth grade students that I played cornhole, and they had never heard of cornhole. And it took me like 10 minutes to quiet the class down. So they had a different idea of what that game was. That's right. They just like that. And that was it for that day. I didn't teach anymore. I saw something in this piece about the state games that the track and field competitions have the greatest variance in age, as the youngest competitor is 6 years old and the oldest is 74. But they're not running the same event, right? Like this is their age groups,
No,
correct? Because that would be awesome if they were running in the same event. Like I want to see a 6-year-old race a 74.
No, they're both in the discus throw.
That's even better. That's even better. That'd be like the myth of Perseus. Somebody's, killed by that flying discus. What's the track and field event where you got to throw the big metal like iron ball? Shot put. That's it. Boy, do you see my NyQuil is like not, my brain is not clicking.
Hey, speaking of the throwing events in track and field, the opening ceremony is Friday night, which is not obviously in the print edition that we're discussing because it went out, or it was printed on Thursday, had an actual former U.S. Olympian, and I'm sorry, his name has escaped me, but he is a 3-time national champion in the hammer throw and represented the United States in the 2021 games in Tokyo.
He's going to be here at opening
ceremonies? He was here Friday
night.
He
was. He was here for, okay, I got you.
Yeah, he was there standing close to Conger and Massey when they had the open flame and all that hairspray fumes above their heads.
That was amazing. I don't know why that picture, it cracked me up. I love to see it. All right. That's cool.
Real quick tidbit. The story covering the state games is now up online, and I went ahead and just put a nice little line in there that Massey and Conger were able to light the cauldron without hurting themselves or anyone else. So kudos to both of them. Good job. Good job, mayors. Way to go. I wonder if they dread things like that, where they know they're going to have to like show up and wear some, like an oversized t-shirt tucked into some khaki pants and hold a torch. Like that would be part of public service that would drive me nuts. Like I've got to go out here and act like, and maybe they are super interested in us, but that would be the hardest part of the job. Well, they both were on rosters for college football teams. Very true. Yes. So, I mean, and they're both young. If they're 40 yet, they're not that much over 40. They both got young kids, and both of their kids were there involved in the opening ceremony. So that's one advantage to having two younger mayors, because as much as I love Jimmy Harris and Jerry Gist, the image of them lighting the cauldron. Choosing your words carefully right now, aren't you? Versus the image of Conger and Massey lighting the cauldron. You just get, there's just different concerns there. Different concerns. Although I don't know. I feel like Gifts might have worn Massey's outfit. They could have just traded him out. I think Conger at least had on shorts. It was hot that day, and is there air conditioning in Liberty's gym? Because they had to move it inside because of the rain earlier. I hope there's air conditioning in that gym. I thought the picture was taken at the brewery. I don't know why. It looked like the brewery. Well, maybe not. The brewery and Liberty Tech sort of look like each other on the outside. They got the same color. No, in all seriousness, they got the same color of like paint on their bricks or whatever. So I could see that. But no, that was right out front at Liberty School. Nice. Speaking of high schools, JCM football track facilities taking shape. Uh-huh. I would like to think I might have had something to do with this, but maybe not. There's a lot of people claiming responsibility for this. Okay, I'm just saying. I just know I sent you a text early that morning. I was like, they're putting in bleachers at. Well, this story was written before you sent the text. Dang. But I thought you were taking credit, like Greg Hammond and I are taking credit for years of writing columns about how there needs to be a track and field facility in Jackson. Oh no, I've never said that. Oh, okay. I'm not taking credit for that. Okay, but yes, the photo that I put out, what was it, Thursday or Wednesday or whatever, of the stands going in. Yeah, that's all because of you. So thank you for that. All right. Yes, absolutely. So where are we in this process? Because, Lord, it has felt like a long time. So here's the main thing that people need to know, and that people are wanting to know in the comments, particularly the ones who don't have a subscription, so they can't get through the paywall to actually read the story. So they put comments that show that they don't really know what's going on and haven't read to see what's going on. They're hopeful. Unfortunately, JCM scheduled, they are hosting their first game of the season. They're scheduled to host their first game of the season. It's against Northside. Rematch of what was the Commissioner's Cup championship game last year, classic game that JCM won with a
Unbelievable.
last-minute touchdown right in the corner. It was almost like a Brett Favre to Sterling Sharp.
Sterling Sharp, Donald
Yeah.
Driver, fill in the blank.
Yeah,
Antonio Freeman.
Freeman. Yeah, he was the one I was trying to think of. Freeman is just inside the back corner of the end zone, brings it down, gets a foot in the end zone to take the lead and get the win. They're going to start out with each other this season, and it's scheduled to be at JCM. The Lashley Rich Construction, who is overseeing the project, they're hopeful, depending on how the weather works with them, of getting it done in time for that first game. But they are quick to say, we are hopeful. We are not promising anything. We're not guaranteeing anything. That's our aim. All the subcontractors think it's a hard deadline to have it done by then. Hopefully no subcontractors watch or listen to this podcast. And so they're working toward that. But it's kind of a situation where everything has to fall in place for them over the entire summer for them to get it done. Now, it's looking like they're going to play some home games there. But I looked at the schedule the other day. It was the first time I'd seen it. I could be wrong, but I think their first 3 games are at home. Maybe the second game. Maybe the second game's on the road.
Yeah, I want to say it's a home away home, but I think
maybe it's 3 of the first 4 games are at home, and then you got like an entire month before you play another home game.
I can tell you what we're internally talking about just in conversations at JCM. I think internally we're saying, at least I say we, just people I've talked to them all.
Right.
If we can just get in there by homecoming,
that would be
great. Yeah. Well,
Jason will be crunk that night.
Yes. I think it's in October. If we could have our
Are we still saying crunk?
No, we're not. No, we're not.
Okay.
We're not saying that at all.
All right. We should bring it back.
If I walked in to JC, that's what I'll do tomorrow. I'm like, listen, if we can get this in here by October 8th, this is going to be crunk. They would say, get out. You're done. You're
Please
fired.
get video. Send me video of you saying that.
Yeah, I'm going to find Eric Turner and say, hey, coach, we'll get crunk October 8th. No, they would lock me out and take my key. This is, if I was anybody that was part of this school system, Lashley Rich included, I would just say, I wouldn't say a date at all. I would say we're going to work really hard and you'll play a full schedule the 2026 season. Mm-hmm. And I would just leave it at that.
Well, at first, I think that's what they were going to say. The only thing that was guaranteed 4 or 5 months ago was, yeah, you should be able to play boys soccer and track next spring. But even with all the nasty weather that the area had back in the spring, once we had that flood in early April, we didn't really have a ton of rain the rest of the month of April and into the month of May. I mean, we didn't have a drought, but it wasn't like the month of February where you may go 2 weeks without seeing the sun. And the field houses were both pretty close to having the roofs complete. So, and once you get the roof on and you are working, how they call it, in the dry, that's a big corner to turn there.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, and they turned that corner. And so when you think about the fact that even before Lashley Rich got on the project about a year ago, they already had the bleachers ordered. They already had the turf ordered. They already had, I think they had the goalpost ordered. So they shouldn't have to wait for or risk any supply chain issues for all that stuff to come in. So hopefully they're pretty close to just simply putting the puzzle together and having it assembled, if not by mid-August, maybe by Labor Day.
The progress has been amazing to me. I mean, and that's something else that we talk about a lot at school. It's just like, Dad, like this has come up so fast. Once they actually started the work, like it's been really impressive to kind of see it form in real time. Every day I pass by it, it's like there's something else that's been added to it. So,
and just think, this time last year, all y'all had out there was a very muddy looking swimming pool out there.
Well, yeah, I mean, we were considering forming a swim team, and
you should,
just because we had a practice facility just already there. We were gonna get it going.
Finally, this town has a practice facility besides a basketball gym or a football practice field.
That's right. We got an all natural pond right in the middle of the city. It was wonderful. Just water skiing.
Just messing with y'all, city leaders. Don't start or don't stop giving me info.
Nope. All right. Shifting a little bit, staying in high school sports, but shifting from the public sector to the private sector. Longtime TCA girls basketball coach Matt Coble has decided to step away, and you had two sort of articles on that. One, a I guess it would be sort of like an op-ed, but not really. And then
Sports
one
column,
was
yeah.
sports column, and then just the matter of fact he is resigning. I'll talk about both of those at the same time. One, how long has Matt been a head coach at TCA?
This was his 12th season as head coach. I didn't realize it'd been that many, but good grief.
Yeah,
Time keeps
I want to
flashing before our eyes
say
the older we get.
he took over my second or third year officiating, and yeah, which would have been around 2013, 12 or 13, and took over from a guy I coached with for 5 years, Joe North. So I know from experience that coaching under Coach North would be like essentially like having a head coaching job in some way. Like Joe North was that good of a coach to where he could teach his assistant to be a head coach while that assistant was an assistant.
All right.
And Matt also had really good help from Rod Parker. Rod and I used to play a lot of basketball together. Rod's got a great mind for basketball. His son was an excellent athlete and a big time player at Trinity.
Yeah.
Rod coached on the middle school and was one of the best middle school coaches around here. So, Matt, I know had a really good support system at Trinity and also did a heck of a job leading that program. How many state championships did he win? Was it just one or did he
Yeah, it
win
was
more
just
than one?
one.
Just that one.
They won it in February of 2020 because Division II championships happen a week or two before Division I
Yes.
championships. So they were able to get their championship won, and then COVID hit in the middle of the week of the girls' state championships in Murfreesboro.
That
A
was
couple
my year
weeks
to go to
later.
state. That was the one. And
Really?
I had the boys and didn't get to go.
So
So
you could have been officiating undefeated Southside boys at state?
when they would not have let me officiate them because they were from
Okay.
our district or not
Okay.
district, whatever it's called, association where we
Yeah.
covered. But yeah, I would have been up there at the same time. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. So Matt had one, but he had some deep runs, and I think you said in your sports column that this was a big deal. I mean, it's a big deal regardless when a coach of that many years steps away from program, but they have a program that's like rebuilding or reloading, I guess, for another potential run at state. Right?
Yeah. I mean, now granted, Division 2A right now is a lot different looking than Division 2A in 2020. Because you got USJ with apparently one of the best players in the country in Halen
Uh-huh.
Ayers. And even if they don't have her, Lily Teague and the rest of the players on that team are a really good team. And then Halen just kind of accentuates all that and makes them even better. So they're a definite state title contender. Not to mention the team that won it this past year and in the weird sounding Webb School of Bell Buckle. I mean, a couple of years ago when they won it in Division 2A, they literally had an international all-star team because they're a boarding school.
Oh, yeah,
And
of course.
boarding schools have not necessarily quantified liberties in the TSSAA rule book, but because students live on campus, they've got a few more. They can, for lack of a better term, they can get away with more stuff than the typical school can, private or public, can get away with.
Mm-hmm.
And so they've got all that going. So Web School is going to be a state title contender. USJ for the next few years is going to be a state title contender. When USJ won it last year and they beat Good Pasture in the state championship, Good Pasture was as young as USJ was, and the player that they put on Halen that game did a good job of playing defense on her and matching up with her on both ends of the court. So Good Pasture is going to be a tough out for the next few years as well. Meanwhile, TCA had a low spot, been at a low point in the program because for whatever reason, I mean, a couple of years ago they only had like 7 or 8 girls on the team total, and they were young. Had I think no seniors one year, then one senior the next year. But that means that you're building a nice little nucleus. In addition to the nucleus that is older now and is led by, or at least from my perspective, seems to be led by Tori Robinson, who is going to be a senior this year. And you've got a group of about 5 or 6 girls who played together for 3 or 4 years to get and actually played, not just sitting on the bench watching the group ahead of them. They had a girl transfer in from, or 2 girls transfer in from South Gibson, who immediately came in, and and they were eligible to play because they didn't have a varsity record playing in TSSAA, so they didn't have to move. One was in 8th grade, another one was in 9th grade, so they were able to play immediately. They were making immediate contributions and increasing their minutes and production as the season went on. So you get all that working together. Yeah, they've got one more year with Tori, who's been their leading scorer, but you don't have to work that hard to figure out, okay, when Tori leaves, how are they going to fill the gap that she's going to leave on the scoreboard? Because there's plenty of girls to take that spot. If no one person takes the spot, they've got plenty to fill it. And from what I understand, they've got even more coming up behind this group.
And speaking of of South Gibson girls, there's the South Gibson connection here because Coble's stepping aside, and Jana Kaler, who's the assistant, she's just going to take over the program.
Well, that's an interim thing for now.
And okay.
In fact, the way that I found out that Coble had stepped down was a friend of mine so Coble told the team at a meeting at 9:00 on Friday morning, May 30th. But that morning, all the team knew was that they were meeting. And I think I was told that all this kind of came together within a span of at the most 72 hours leading up to that Friday morning meeting. They were already scheduled to meet at the school to get on a bus and go to McKenzie for a play day, where a bunch of teams get together and spend the whole day just playing quick games, and coaches are able to work with their teams and see, hey, this ain't working, let's tweak this and try different things before everything gets serious in November. And I had a buddy who was at that thing, and he texted me. He said, hey, TCA's here, Coble's not. Kaler is coaching them, and the word going around is that Coble resigned this morning. So I think I was watching my daughters at horse camp that day. So I'm balancing watching my daughters and sending texts and leaving messages on voicemails with TCA people, trying to see if there was anything to it. And then finally at 5:00, when I'm leaving to go get babies out of daycare and run to Little Caesar to get dinner, they decide, oh yeah, we're going to send a press release out. Thank y'all, TCA. So, but
have you had a chance to talk to Matt, or is this?
He has, honestly, I haven't even tried to reach out since that day. I mean, I texted him once. I think I called him once. And if this were 10 years ago, I would have badgered him until he finally got back to me. Now I'm kind of at the point, everything I got going on at home and everything I'm trying to do at work, if I try to call you and you don't answer, if I'm still able to get the story and you don't want to talk to me, I'm not, whatever. Also, I mean, he's probably having to answer a lot of questions, and probably a lot of the questions I had, he didn't want to answer, which is fine. But good on him for being like, you know what? I got 2 young kids. They are getting to an important part of their life that I don't want to miss. And most coaches, not all of them, but a lot of coaches, when they're going to leave a program, they'd rather leave it when it's about to get good. Because as much as they would enjoy building and being good again, they don't want their lasting legacy, particularly if they're going to stay there coaching or teaching like Coble is. They don't want their legacy in the locker room being like, oh, he left when it got bad.
Yeah, that's true.
So the next coach is inheriting a lot. And Coble said, you know what, this is the time to get out. I've had a good run. I got a state championship. So I'm going to be a teacher. I'm still going to be here rooting for the girls. He's probably going to be at a lot of the games. But my primary job is to be a husband. My secondary job after that is to be a father. And I'm going to go do that.
It's fun, because if I remember correctly, he was a student at Trinity, graduated from Trinity, and coach at Trinity. That's just, he's been there his entire life, almost literally. So, hey, good for him. He had a lot of success there. And look, I got a daughter about to go to college, so I know how fast it goes. So I would be doing the exact same thing. And I've coached. I have been a head coach of middle school programs, never at the high school level, but I know I've been an assistant at the high school level. The amount of time it takes is ridiculous. I mean, if you think about it,
particularly now, the day that he told them he was leaving, it should have been like, if I'm a dad, I'm hoping, like, I would expect my kids who are athletes, if I have any athletic kids, which so far I don't. I think I may have some coming up later. I would expect them, hey, let's take a week or 2 off right after school. That's not happening. They were getting on the bus to go to a play day, and they probably practiced a few times if they didn't go to other play days earlier in the week. Coaching a high school sports team is a year-round job that is really a whole lot more trouble than most of the supplements are worth that pay them for that coaching part.
Yep.
So
From experience, coaches have to get paid more. I mean, they just have to, and they may now at this point, like since I've gotten out of it. But yeah,
I
it's
know
a
that
full-time job.
I know Jackson-Madison County Schools has increased a lot of their supplements, but I mean, even the supplements that they're getting now, it's like, yeah, they're still having to coach 12 months a year. So if you can find anywhere else in the budget to give to them, yeah, take care of the roofs on the schools, but give that assistant football coach maybe a few $100 more.
I'll tell you something. The amount of revenue high school athletics bring into the district is huge. It's huge. All right. That is the last thing that we had to talk about, but something I am going to do as we close this out. There are a couple of stories that we didn't get to that I would encourage people to, if you don't subscribe, go ahead and subscribe. So that way you can go back and you can look at this issue. One is Chief Corley addressing youth crime. This is on the heels of the incident at Kate Campbell. There are local entrepreneurs who can help find funding help at the Co. So if you're one of those, if you're local and you want to know how to sort of get your business going, the Co is a great resource. There's an article about that. I also find just all of the local briefs to be very informative, and we don't have time to just like run through all of those, but that is weekly in every paper. An excellent book review of local poet James Cherry's book. That was well done by Whitney Rio Ross. And last thing, the Rockabillys. They won 3 of the first 4 home games. And then, of course, a lot of op-ed columns, even a religious column in response to another religious column the week before about the papacy and the Pope and his role. So there's a lot of content here. If you haven't subscribed, you should subscribe because you can fill in the blanks of all the stuff that we didn't get to.
Yeah, I will say one person who has recently become a friend on Facebook on another Facebook comment thread. There was a lot of discussion about there's nothing going on in Jackson. And so I put the community calendar up to let them know, hey, here's a list of things that are going on the next couple of weeks. And one person commented saying, hey, my husband subscribes. I don't read it because there's too much religious stuff in there and I don't care to read that stuff. And I said, I get that you don't want to read that stuff, but at the most, religious stuff is usually 4 stories per week. At the most, usually it's 2 or 3. And then it's going to be like a couple of dozen news, sports type stuff. So anyone who's like, that's a right-wing rag that just supports Southern Baptist stuff, yes, there are a couple of Southern Baptist columnists, one of them being my pastor. But fortunately, in the recent months, we've had a couple of Methodists start submitting columns. But like I said, religious stuff is usually only shared on our social media on Sundays, Monday through Saturday, unless something big's going on, like a minister getting arrested. There's no religious stuff getting put out there unless it's time sensitive. So yeah, the March for Jesus this week is the exception to the rule. But with the exception of that, it's mostly government watchdog type stuff and letting y'all know what's going on with your county commission and city council and the school board and features and whatever sports I can get in there as well.
And I will say this too, because a year ago, I would have said, yeah, this is like the opinion section's pretty heavy with segment of Christianity. That is not the case anymore. I think the faith page is much more balanced now. I think you have varying perspectives of religion, specifically Christianity, within that section of the paper. Where maybe a year ago it might not have been as diverse, but I do think now it's very much balanced in perspective.
Yeah, I appreciate Adam Dooley at Inglewood, Todd Brady, who used to be at Union, has since the Post started, he's left Union and is doing something else now. They've been faithful columnists, but they do kind of represent the Southern Baptist perspective. I did a third one at the beginning of this year, Dr. Jerry Drace and his wife Becky, but they're focusing on marriage and family type issues. And but then, a big thanks and shout out to Mary Beth Eberly at Grace United Methodist and Adam Johnson, who was on staff at First United Methodist, but recently left there to become the director at our local Habitat for Humanity chapter. They're bringing their perspective to the faith page or the op-ed page, as Adam has been there once, maybe twice in the last month or so. Yeah, I appreciate. And anybody else out there, when the Post first started, I was saying faith leaders, but the Catholic column responded to what Pastor Dooley wrote 3 or 4 weeks ago while the Catholic Church was searching for the new Pope. His response to that, the response to that was from a local Catholic member. But as far as I know, I don't think he's in leadership? He didn't indicate that he
Actually,
was.
he is Anglican because he goes to the church that I attend.
Really?
Yes, but that is rooted in a lot of the Catholic tradition. Yes.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, he didn't give any indication, so I just assumed he was Catholic. So my apologies, Mr. Burleson.
But there's a lot of Anglicanism that is obviously, it.
Okay.
Yep. Well, man, enjoyed it. I thought, man, very informative. Again, I think all politics is local politics. And when I use the word politics, I think that can sometimes be a nasty word or a word with a negative connotation. But really, when it comes down to it, governing can be political. And I think we've just sort of seen sort of all that play out in city council, even though it's
And
not
county
necessarily a
commission
partisan
before
body,
that.
and county commission before that. So, yes, it's important to sort of understand the general narratives, but man, on local matters, you got to know the details. And there's really nowhere else to get details except for local media. So thank you, Brandon. Keep putting this stuff out there. And we will see y'all next week.